Hello, I'm Jorge Gestoso. Welcome to a new program. On today's show, the barrage of investigations launched against President Donald Trump and the outlook of the coming presidential elections with Emilio Viano, political analyst and professor emeritus of American University. Emilio Viano, a warm welcome to the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Emilio, in recent days, the former attorney of President Trump, we're talking about his personal attorney, Michael Cohen, has said in front of the Congress, and he refers to President Trump as this.
He is a racist, he is a con man, and he is a cheat.
What's your reaction?
Well, it is not unexpected because he is someone who knows him very well. Was his lawyer for over 20, 30 years, and was only not just a lawyer, but what we call a fixer. That is someone that if there was a problem, he would be the one intervening, negotiating, and eliminating the problem so that the image of Trump could grow and have a positive glow. So he knows where, as we say, the skeletons are, and can really speak effectively to many themes that are really attracting a lot of attention without answer, like the finances of Trump, his way of doing business, what might have been done illegally, still always the relationship with certain women with whom he had sexual relations, and so on and so forth.
And in the case of the House of Representatives, now in charge of the Democrats, they launched investigation in many of their committees, at least 3 of them. And one of them were the one of the Judiciary Committee, was sending letters to 81 people and entities requiring information that had to do with aspects of the life of President Trump. What do you think that is going to be the next step from that?
Well, certainly this demonstrates to Trump in particular that the atmosphere has changed, that Congress is not anymore, like in the 2 years past, compliant with him, with the Republicans not wanting to make any waves and really permit any substantial criticism of him, that it has changed. The Democrats are now in charge of the lower house, and they can and have a lot of power to do investigations and really to make his life quite miserable. The next 2 years will not be very pleasant for Trump because of all these investigations. And no doubt we will find out a lot of information that before was not known. One of the most important items will be, of course, the tax returns, if they can obtain them, because on the one hand, they will reveal if Trump is really as wealthy as he claims he is, which some people say is not true. And on the other hand, they may also reveal who gave him money, loans, who might have been involved with him in business deals that might have a political influence on him, particularly the famous link with Putin and some other authoritarian governments.
Exactly. They identify like 4 areas that are trying to figure out what's going on. One is the possible Russiagate. Another thing is obstruction of justice. Another thing is corruption. Another thing is abuse of power. Do you think that in either of the 4 areas, something is going to come out that could definitely put him against the ropes?
I think that the probability is very high, particularly when it is coupled with the investigations going along the same lines in New York, which are even, in my opinion, probably more important than the Mueller investigation, because the Mueller investigation is more limited in scope, and it is controlled by the Department of Justice, that is controlled by the White House and therefore by Trump. And we all know all the adventures that had taken place about all of that, and the firing of Sessions because he didn't recuse himself.
Of James Comey?
Exactly. In New York, even though it is still a federal system, it is famously independent, and what they will find can hit more at the heart of the Trump operations, of the Trump empire, and reveal much more about him than the Mueller investigation itself.
What is, if you want, ironic, if you would like to call it some way, is that everybody knows that Michael Cohen is an admitted liar. He has lied to the Congress in 2017, even though he said that there were the lawyers of Trump who make him lie. But he's an admitted liar. He's going to go to jail precisely in the month of May for 3 years. But according to a poll done by the Quinnipiac University, the American public believes Cohen more than Trump. According to that poll, 50% of the American public believes Cohen, only 35% believes on Trump. Means that is Trump a liar?
Well, certainly you can, conclude that. But remember, many facts impact people only if they are open to understand them and accept them. And the poll just said it. 50% believes that Cohen is more truthful than Trump. Only 35% believes Trump. But that is the magic number that he needs to be reelected. 35% of the voters, if they are well distributed throughout the states. And so for him, this means nothing, because that's his focus. Maintain the 35% that is loyal to him, that is charged up, that is enthusiastic, that does not accept anything negative about him, that does not believe anything that comes from the Democratic camp. So the Democrats can find all that they want, but it depends on who is receiving the message. And many people are totally close to accepting anything that is negative about Trump, and he feels fairly insulated from all of this. And of course, many people hope that it will be so that he's not reelected, but I think that in his mind, he feels fairly comfortable saying, I don't care if 50% don't like me. I only need 35%, and I don't give much of a preoccupation about the 50%. They can believe what they want. It doesn't touch me.
The website Axios, just evaluating what's going on, the situation that is living throughout the U.S., is putting as a headline of an article that they wrote, they said, this is the major political scandal in the history of the United States.
Well, those are things that often the media say, this is the biggest, this is the major, this has never happened before, whatever. Certainly in recent memory, you could say that this vast overshadows the Whitewater investigation by Starr against Clinton and the Monica Lewinsky affair. Certainly Trump has more experience with these situations than Clinton had with Monica Lewinsky. In a sense, I really believe that Trump almost revels in this type of criticism, because it gives him the possibility of presenting himself as a victim, as someone who is being persecuted, the witch hunt, and repeating that over and over and over again, and gives him a reason to ask for help from his base, which of course very gladly says, of course, we are with you, we support you, we'll do everything
You're a
for
victim.
you. And because you are a victim, attracting the sympathy of the base. And he has very powerful base. He has been able to convince people that he is going to be the savior, for example, of the middle class and lower middle class. Well, this is not happening. We see our deficit is more than doubled from 174 billions in 2017 to over 300 in 2018.
And the tax returns of most of the Americans in the middle class are lower this time, are receiving less money back from paying taxes than before, and he was promising that his quote-unquote tax reform was going to benefit everybody else.
It is clear that it was, of course, only for the upper classes, and the trade imbalance that he promised he would, of course, correct immediately, going to war against China, against Mexico and Canada, against the European Union, is not working. Our trade imbalance is growing.
But he's telling that everything is going smoothly and the economy is fantastic.
That is the problem, that he, as we say, he never basically apparently tells the truth. And there are people who are willing to accept that because it gives them comfort, it gives them consolation. It is a little bit, I think, as when people invest in a losing proposition. But the more they invest in it, the more they stay with it. Because they say, I already put so much money, I can now put another $1,000 and maybe I make it. and they keep giving. This is one of the psychological tools used by people that take advantage of lonely hearts or of the elderly or of people that want to be rich very quickly and take money from them. The more money they rip them off, the more money they put in, the more they stay with it. Because they say, now I invested so much, I will also lose face if I say that didn't work, it wasn't the right decision. And people don't want to admit that I made a mistake voting for Trump or supporting him.
In recent days, we have seen the sentencing of Paul Manafort, the former campaign manager of President Trump, 4 years, exactly 47 months, not even 4 years. And Cory Booker, that is now a Democratic presidential candidate, mentioned in a TV interview, and I read his words quoting him and say, "A friend told me, we have a justice system that treats you better if you are rich and guilty than if you are poor and innocent." That sentencing is reflecting a little bit this?
Absolutely. It proves that white-collar crime is basically given a pass in this country. I mean, this man didn't pay $6 million of taxes to the government. He hid foreign bank accounts. He didn't register as a foreign agent. He conducted money laundering and other illegal operations. He lied to federal prosecutors brazenly. He disobeyed the orders of the judge, the gag order of the judge. After promising to cooperate in a plea bargain, broke it, did not cooperate. I mean, if any of us have done anything like this, we will never come out of prison. And particularly if one does a crime of violence, which of course is very sad, or even with drugs. Someone was telling me about a man they know who sold some methamphetamines here in D.C. and got 40 years in prison. Manafort, that committed all sorts of white-collar crimes and any type of lack of truthfulness and of proper operations and ethics, is basically going to spend less than 2 years in prison.
Because the recommendation was for Manafort to have a sentence like over 20 years.
The federal guidelines recommend between 20 and 24 years. He, of course, used very much also the fact that he is over 70-year-old. He appeared in court as many, of course, not only him, at his age as being infirm, with a cane.
In a wheelchair.
Look in a wheelchair, all done do not to impress the judge and the public that he is already being punished enough and that he is old and about to die. And
he has been humiliated,
exactly. And instead, if he were to be sprung from prison today, he would be in his dapper suits out there continuing to commit the same crime that he brazenly committed for years. And certainly this doesn't help create an atmosphere of rule of law and respect for the law in our society. It increases the cynicism that people have toward the justice system, which is, of course, favoring the wealthy and white-collar crime.
What do you think that is going to be that we're going to hear from the special investigation of Robert Mueller?
Well, there is a lot of speculation on that. It could be something extremely dramatic, or it could be something not very impressive. But most of all, remember, revealing what he says is not a right that we have, unfortunately, is not a given. The report goes to the Attorney General, and you can expect, of course, Trump to want to take a look at it, and then they will decide what they are going to reveal, even to Congress. And they might send to them a report with most of it blackened out, edited, you know, so that it cannot be read. So I really don't know if we will ever know what Mueller found, because there is no question that Trump and Barr, the Attorney General, that he, of course, wants very much to be on his side, will allow to be revealed. Congress might eventually, if they don't give enough information, subpoena the report, and after a protracted legal battle that might go to the Supreme Court, might get it, if the Supreme Court agrees. So there too, Trump has played very well his cards. While maybe he lost the House, the lower house to the Democrats, he has been working diligently to put judges everywhere that are favorable to more conservative values. And we know that there are two of them in the Supreme Court. And that is what it counts on. And particularly if one of the women judges, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is quite advanced in age and
85 years old,
frail in health, and had recently a bad accident, might not return, or who knows, might pass on. That would be such a gift for Trump, because it would assure for him and for any future very conservative for 30, 40 years. And this is one of the more serious legacies that Trump will live.
He mentions that as an achievement.
Exactly, that many people that aren't even born today will pay a price for someday, because these are going to decide cases that have to do with racism, with human rights, with rights of workers, rights of minorities, sexual minorities, individual liberties, and they will, of course, go in a very conservative direction.
Is he going to end up being impeached?
Well, that is a possibility. That is a political decision. The House could certainly, we can expect, do it if there is enough material to do it. The Senate, being controlled by the Republicans, I don't think will go along. It would historically be something that tarnishes the presidency of Trump. I'm not sure that it is in the best interest of the Democrats. Why? Because we are approaching the re-election campaign. There is a lot of activity already. There is a lot of energy going that way. We have to find money to run these campaigns. We have to keep crisis under control so that there is nothing that destabilizes the perception of the party. If we put this into all this soup, if you want, of elements that can explode in our face, it could explode in our face in the sense that Trump could very definitely use it to say, I'm really a victim. Now they're going really too far.
I'm talking about precisely the 2020 presidential election. Is going to be a candidate mostly conservative inside the Democratic Party being the nominee, or is going to be more progressive? We're going to see a sort of Biden that is Hillary Clinton 2.0, or we're going to see Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, or Beto O'Rourke that are much more in this country to the left? Well,
we don't know, of course. As you know, there are about 14 candidates now, so it is a big, wide field. Some of them, I think, don't have any chances. I think that it would be probably an error to have Biden. First, because of his age. Secondly, because he's so well known, has gone through so many careers in the federal government, in politics, that is vulnerable also to criticism. When you have that baggage carried with you, you are vulnerable.
And he's a loser in terms of he tried already and he failed to be a candidate.
My opinion is that the Democrats have to find someone in the center. If this someone leftist by American definition, it would doom the campaign. Because while the leftists, like you mentioned, of course,
Sanders, Warren,
Senator Sanders, Warren, etc., that talk about justice for the workers, justice for the middle class, Medicare for all, free education at the university level. Americans don't go for that. They don't want it, even if it is in their own interest. This is the amazing thing about the American people.
It's a Stockholm syndrome.
Exactly. They bought into these capitalist ideas that I can be a billionaire, so I don't care what happens to you, I'm okay. And that is, of course, not how it should work. So someone from the center would really have a better chance to win the election.
We have seen also something that is pretty worrisome, that there was a resolution in the past days from the House of Representatives condemning anti-Semitism, anti-Islamism, and all types of bigotry. That reflects that there's a big problem. And the problem is, for example, that in the last 4 years, the amount of groups of hate has grown 30%, 7% only in the past year. What's going on behind all this in the country?
Well, I think it is a consequence, obviously, of Trump and his way of doing his campaign and his presidency, his pronouncements, his divisiveness, his insults, is inciting even at times, you could say, violence during the rallies of his campaign. There were some people opposing him, inciting people to take care of them, throw them out, and stuff like that. And also the fact that he has not condemned certain types of violent events like the Charlottesville March by the fascist, conservative, racists that marched there, while he, of course, would condemn the Afro-American football players who kneeled during the playing of the anthem as traitors that should be fired. And he said with very vehemence, you know, if I were an owner, I would fire them. And so there is ambivalence there that is very clear. No doubt that his style of presidency has been extremely divisive, and it is not by accident. He wants division, because it is division that put him in power. And it is division that we re-elect him. So he wants to keep it that way. He wants to keep the country divided, tense, and with his base extremely loyal and faithful and ready to go to battle for him.
Very interesting what's going on with one of a Congresswoman, Democrat Ilhan Omar. She is Muslim, and she has been attacked left and right precisely to condemning everything that has to do with pro-Israel. What's your reading?
Well, we are seeing here new Congress members going to where no one else dared to go. In other words, touching important allies, sacred cows, as we say, like Israel. And she has been basically saying that we should not, as a country, blindly protect Israel and all Israel's decisions, particularly in what pertains to the treatment of the Palestinians and other issues. And unfortunately, this is a sacred cow in this country, that you cannot touch Israel. Remember when Netanyahu came to speak to Congress without even telling Barack Obama that he was coming to town.
Without being invited by Obama.
Imagine a foreign head of state coming to speak to a parliament, doesn't even, as a courtesy, inform the president of the country, let alone ask for permission. So it shows, you know, how the politicians here definitely don't want to touch Israel or anything that has to do with it, in part because of the strong evangelical movement in this country. That is,
and in part because they're financing a lot of campaigns, Israel influencing through lobbyists their politicians. They're buying the politicians.
Sure. For example, soon at the end of this month, I think there will be the IPAC conference, and no doubt Netanyahu will be coming.
Yes,
and there will be a lot of rhetoric. So the problem is this, that as soon as someone distinguishes, of course, between Israel, Jews, and, of course, anti-Semitism, if you say something against Israel, it is immediately translated as if you are anti-Jew. And this puts anyone running for public office in great jeopardy, and even a business person or a private person for that reason. It is a clear manipulation. One should be able to be anti-Israeli, and there are many Jews in the US who are not in agreement with Israel. But it is often used immediately to paint the person as you are anti-Semite, you are anti-Jew, which is, of course, wrong. It is racism. It shouldn't be tolerated. And this is
as it shouldn't be tolerated to be anti-Islamic.
Exactly. And that is also where Trump has not been consistent.
Because of his own benefit of the Jewish or the Israel lobby helping him.
Of course. And that is the worry, because the Jews in this country, particularly in New York and the East Coast, have been, and of course in Hollywood on the West Coast and San Francisco, have been the biggest donors to the Democratic Party.
To the opposition.
And so if Trump would this morning going to Alabama and speaking to the journalist, said the Democratic Party is an anti-Israel and an anti-Jewish party, of course, where is the Democrats a lot? Because if this is going to be believed, many Jews may not give them money, they may give it to Trump. And this will deprive them of funds that they absolutely need to fight for regaining the White House.
Emilio Viano, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.